This is Shay Bynes, founder and chief fire igniter of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, and this is the KDE Podcast Live. With a beautifully diverse panel of co-hosts, get ready for powerful and fresh perspectives of what it looks like to be a Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. Let's go.
Let's go, everybody. Hello, all. I'm so glad to be here today. We have Joy, Brandon, and Dory with us. And I'm assuming we're waiting on Phil Bynes, but we're going to keep on going. We're going to keep going. I'm so glad to be here this week. I am Latara Venice, and this is KDE Podcast Live, episode number 443. Woo, we getting closer and closer to the 500th episode. I love it. I love it. I just love it. And we are here with Joy, Dory, and Brandon, 3 of our 7 co-hosts. And we're actually about to filter in a few more who will kind of sit in when some of us have to take a break or need to be on, vacation for a minute. I like to travel sometimes. And sometimes it's like, well, I got this podcast. Oh, gosh. So what has been happening in your world? We always talk beforehand, but let's share with the people. Joy.
I was just sharing before we came on live, my husband and I just returned from several days camping in Georgia. We live in Florida. It really kind of glamping because it is in a camper that has a bathroom and air conditioning. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of fun to be able to get out in nature and see God's creation from a totally different landscape, a totally different perspective. One of the times in particular where I really felt the presence of the Lord was when I was by myself on my kayak and the wind was rustling through the trees and the leaves at just such a beautiful melodic pace. And I thought, how could people not believe in God when you see this beauty that's around you and just feel his presence? It was really an incredible experience.
Yeah, I love that. Love it. I like camping, but I like to be in a cabin with a bathroom.
I'm right there with you.
Yep.
I like to be in a big cabin with a bathroom where I don't have to go out the cabin to the bathroom because it'd be bears on the side. I've been in one of those. I was like, oh, Lord, please don't let me have to use the bathroom tonight. I hear the bear out there. Love it. Dory.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Latara. We tried camping when our kids were little. We lived in Colorado for a while. And we thought, oh, this will be cool. And I'm thinking, this is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be in an Airbnb or, some sort of glamping cottage sort of arrangement would work. But yeah, hey, there's Phil. But yeah, for me right now, folks, look at the date. We are 2 months away from Christmas. So what is Dory doing? We're preparing at my church and I'm in the church band on percussion, and we are already rehearsing for the Christmas program. So it's hard to believe, but there you go. Christmas comes early here in North Carolina.
But the people, Christmas come early everywhere.
I know.
Awesome. Brandon.
Yeah, so last week, Amanda and I had some friends in town from West Virginia, and similar to Joy, we also went camping. So we drove about 6 to 7 hours north to go to Yosemite, and so we camped with our friends there. It was only the second time that I've been, so we had some really cool hikes and just explored the park, which for those that haven't been to Yosemite or some of the national parks, they are so massive that we had a 2-hour drive to one of our hikes, and we're still inside of the same park. So they're just so vast and beautiful. And to Joy's point, just being able to be in nature and see God's creation is just always incredible. And just when you first see the view, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is just incredible. So beautiful, fun weekend and great connecting with friends and also being outside in nature camping. So it's a fun weekend.
Love it. I love Yosemite. I've had an opportunity to go there, I think once or twice. That's where the mountain lion was. And then I've been to Big Bear. Nice. Yeah, we heard mountain lions and I hurry up and got off that hiking trail. See y'all later.
Yeah, you do not want to mess around with those. That is for sure. I have not seen one and honestly hope I don't.
Listen,
Latara, I'm sensing a theme here. Lions and tigers and bears, so am I.
yeah, you ain't never seen a whole bunch of women pick up their kids so fast and run. Let me tell you. Oh, Mr. Bynes, what have you been up to?
Well, I'll tell you what, lately I've been looking for new ways to play with Malia, my youngest, because she gets bored very easy. And whenever she gets bored, she starts doing things she's not supposed to do. And
Mhm.
so I discovered that she likes puzzles, right?
Oh.
Puzzles as well as mashing, of course. But I'm still not sure how long I can get her to play with the puzzle. Like she finished one puzzle, she put it back in the box, and then that was it. So I might have to get a bunch of them. But that's
Mhm.
what I've been doing, looking for fun ways to entertain her and keep her engaged.
Hey,
Good.
Phil, she has
Good.
one of these, doesn't she? Yeah?
Drum,
She-
yeah.
Yeah?
Sometimes she plays on the drum, and when she does play on it, she stays on it for a while. But when
Okay.
she's not,
You can drum with her and make up songs and stuff, just
oh yeah,
saying.
oh yeah, oh she forces me.
I bet.
It's not good enough for her to do anything on her own. She needs group participation. So
Exactly.
Yeah,
mhm,
she's a different, wonderful,
mhm.
wonderful child. I get to spend a lot of time with her sometimes. She will force you. She's like, no, I want you now. Love it, love it. Well, I just wrapped up a 7-day visit with my brother. It was awesome. First time seeing him in, yes, Joy, over 30 years, and it was really cool. And it was so funny because we didn't do a whole lot. I cooked more, and he and his wife went and did a couple of things. And um I said, you just want to be here in my presence? Yeah, just want to be here with you. Like, oh, that feels so good. So it was really good. They went home yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. So yeah, it was a really great visit, and all the boys got to finally meet their uncle, and it was just really good. That's not my mom's son, but that was my dad. My dad had a lot of kids. It was 5 of us together, so total. So it's really good to be able to spend that time with him. And I look forward to, seeing my other siblings who I haven't seen in even longer time, for a couple of them. So it's funny how life works, right?
Mhm.
Then we're talking about power dynamics, and some of the reason why we had some of the stuff happen is because of power dynamics, right? So we're talking about power dynamics today, and I love this conversation. I was reading through, first off, just the title, Power Dynamics, because we never really think about the kingdom, right? And how it plays into something like power dynamics, because so many of us are control freaks, right? We want the control. We want to do things our way. That's about power. And so you have to really see things a little bit differently when we go through a kingdom lens. So I'm excited about this conversation today. Um, I'm really excited, and the scripture is just perfect. All right, Philip Bynes.
Well, can you read the scripture for me, Latara?
I sure can. The scripture says, follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. That's Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2.
That's good. And the reason I had you read it because I wanted to make sure I was on the right one, because I got started with this power dynamics thing and messed around and wrote 2 more on power dynamics, looking at it from different angles. So I had to make sure I was in the right place. So that's so good. But before I dive into this, let me ask you guys, what do you think about this whole ideal of power dynamics? I know you guys got a chance to take a look at what I put out there, but I want to get someone else's angle on this thing before I dive in.
Anybody? Brandon, you look like something right there on your lips. Like, I promise it look like
I'm on
you're
the
ready.
spot. I switched it up.
Yeah. No, I don't know if there's anything necessarily. I think to Latara's point, it's interesting to think of power dynamics in the kingdom, and I'm excited to jump into it because there's a couple things that Phil, you wrote in this that I think is really cool. But I think one thing that's coming to mind even as I'm as I'm speaking out loud, is just the idea of power doesn't necessarily have to be this rude or like almost, I don't know. Sometimes when people think of a boss, they think of just being reprimanded or just not in control whatsoever. So I think, I don't know. I feel like at this point I'm just kind of rambling and thinking out loud. But I think there can be a healthy power dynamics, of course, when we're talking about kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about power dynamics, I think of two words, and that would be submission and respect. Using myself as an example, my husband is the first man that I ever really wanted to be submissive to. And in the Bible, it talks about submit to your spouse, right? And I was like, yeah, okay, that applies to everyone but Joy. And so clear you haven't met me. And these are the thoughts that were going through my young Christian mind. And I realized when I met Robert, the reason that I was willing to be submissive to him, not like he was yielding a whip or anything, but letting him be the head of our household and really fulfill the role that God had called him to do, was because I respect him. And so to me, when I think about power dynamics, be it in the workplace with clients or be it in society with other individuals, it's a matter of, are we willing to submit? And do we respect the individual that we are submitting to? Those are my thoughts.
Mm.
You got something, Dory, before I jump in here?
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you have, the phrase power dynamics, I just think about how cool it is when you put people together on a team, especially, and they all have the same kingdom focus and the same, they're looking at things through the kingdom lens, and they have the same goals. Man, that is one powerful group. You can have, a power team to move things forward.
Mm-hmm. Cool. You got something, Latara, before I dive in here?
I'm in agreement with everything that they're saying. And when I look down, y'all, I'm sharing stuff out into social media. So you should do the same thing. I just want y'all to know I'm sharing stuff on pages, okay? So folks can come on in here. But I love the thought of power dynamics. I really do. I think that, especially with power dynamics, what I love is that sometimes there's this tug of war within a person to submit, as Joy said, and learning how to sit at the feet of authority. And for grown folks, that can be kind of hard. And I'm interested in how we're going to talk about this, exchange and navigation of power dynamics, especially in lieu of this scripture today.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, if I wanted to go and think about power dynamics from the vantage point of the world, the world is into competition. Why? Because they're like, hey, if I don't have the power and you got the power, then you're going to take advantage of me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the world will look at power dynamics from the standpoint of competition and wanting to get the advantage. Right. But we live in an upside down kingdom. Right. The kingdom of God is one in which you are supposed to give the advantage to be on top. Right. So if you want to be the person that's the greatest in the kingdom, you need to serve everyone. Right. And so that's an upside down way of looking at things. And I think it's a hard thing for the world to get. And if we're Christians that are trying to learn how to live kingdom, and we've been in the world system for so long, this whole power dynamic thing can be a struggle. Right. But I think that's what's so cool about Ephesians 5 is, God gives us a perspective, especially when he talks about Christian households and how we're supposed to live our life, right? And so I think it's really good. I have this one point here that I want to highlight, and we can dive in after that, right? The thing to notice about power dynamics in the kingdom is that they're rarely equal. It's like God intentionally makes it unequal, right? But at least that's the way I see it, right? But the thing with that is, even when it's unequal, you have a way to, what's the word I'm looking? You can advance even when it's unequal. And it really doesn't matter if you have more power in a situation or less power in a situation. You can get rewards that that are lasting rewards, right? You can do things that's going to move the kingdom forward, and you can do those things while serving the other person. right? And so, like, when I think about my relationship with my wife, and after hearing my pastor say that, as he was highlighting how he is with his wife, his past wife, she's passed since then, but he would say that they were in a competition and he refused to let his wife outserve him. And when I heard that, that was such a powerful thought. I was like, oh my goodness, first of all, I never heard a man say that before, because the examples that I saw with men in the household, where they were, if power was even talked about, they were bragging about how their wife served them, right? And so I thought that that was very powerful. Like, the way to exert your power in the kingdom of God is through service. And when we think of it that way, it's an awesome thing. It's a very awesome thing. And so, like, when I think about the kingdom, I don't have to worry about people taking advantage of me from the standpoint of power dynamics. To navigate this thing is I give it away and God will return it, even if that person never gives me what is due me.
Yeah. That's good. As you were talking, I was really thinking about when I stepped into the role of being the director of culture for KDE. And then I realized that, well, together we kind of realized that I was going to have to be the one to manage the certification program. Now, that's Shay's baby. Shay created that certification program, right? And so here I am, the power dynamics was that Shay was walking me through some stuff, guiding me, leading me. And then all of a sudden there was this hole because Shay could no longer do that. And I was like, well, who gonna manage me? Who gonna tell me what to do? who's gonna do this part? And I realized, whoa. And I was talking to Shay one day and she said, well, it's your dream now. You take it, you dream with it. You go talk to God about it. I was like, well, really, that was your dream. But the power dynamic changed in that. And as I was thinking, it's like sometimes we have a hard time stepping into those moments when those power dynamics kind of shift. And I was reading the definition of a dynamic, and it's, a noun, it's a force that stimulates change or progress within a system or a process. And change, God was kind of like that dynamic. There was like, I'm shifting Shay out of this, and here you are. And then he had to remind me, you have a certification program. You know how to do this. You know how to run these things, but what happens sometimes within power dynamics is we get intimidated by the person who may be running that thing or over that thing, that power. We get intimidated by it. And so I'm like, okay, we've gone through this before, Latara. You are not to be Shay. You are to be Latara Venice. This is what you're supposed to be. So, we have to understand that it's not just where someone wants the power. Sometimes we don't want the power. And sometimes the dynamic changes who the power goes to. And that's that unequal part, right? Because now Shay's just like, I don't even know what's going on with the certification program. Unless, she's like, I'm good with it because I know who has it in their hands now. Right. But that took a long time. It took almost a year for me to go, oh, wait, this really is. The dynamic has changed here. So that means that the power has changed here, and how it looks may be different too, which is something that kind of, I think, freaks people out too. Like a new boss that comes on, and it's like, oh, what they gonna do? How they gonna change things? We was used to being able to take a 15-minute, really a 30-minute break because the boss wouldn't say nothing. But I heard this boss is a stickler. So we have those, though, we play those mind games with ourselves when it comes to something like this.
Yeah, from that definition of dynamic, Latara, the word change really stuck out, because I think as human beings in general, we say like, oh, we're cool with change. We want to be innovative, but in reality, a lot of us like control and not change, right? We like things to stay the same. We don't want that new boss to come and change our 30-minute break down to 15 or whatever. And I think as entrepreneurs, I was just talking with a group of financial planners yesterday that have talked about how they're advising some of their business owner clients who just took over a new business, but the old owner is still there and is trying to control everything. So the exact opposite of what's happening with you and Shay with the certification program, right? And I think as entrepreneurs, we could be in either side of this. We might be stepping into a new role in a family business or taking over a business where there's some change happening, and that there's this power. I don't want to necessarily say struggle, or we could be the person that has released this business, or God's calling us to release something, but we're still trying to get our hands into it. So I think we just have to sit with Holy Spirit and figure out, hey, what is our role in this particular season? And maybe that is relinquishing some of that power, or maybe we're still called to be the decision maker. But again, each situation is going to be different there.
Yeah.
As I'm listening to you guys unpack this, the thought struck me, isn't the ultimate power dynamic turning over control to the Lord? Isn't that the ultimate power dynamic that we need to seek? And that would shift how we show up and what we do?
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate, but the interesting part about that is when we shift our focus and control to God, a lot of times he will turn around and he'll give it back to us. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. But hold up, I want you to tell me what to do. He's like, no, you're mature now. I need you to seek me, but I also need you to go with what I place inside of you, because I've already given you the tools, the goods that you need for this thing. And so I think it's both sides of that, it's two sides of that same coin, Joy. Yes, we need to seek the Lord and yield to his power. And we also need to hear him when he's saying, okay, I know that you got to yield it hard. Now I need you to operate in the power, go in the strength that I have given you. Go in the strength that you have.
Taking action. Yeah, taking action on it.
Phil, that reminds me of a story from way back when, where I was helping out a youth ministry, and the youth pastor was doing these teen concerts, and any band from anywhere, any style could come and perform, as long as they kept it clean and followed some other rules. And I was always tapped to be just one of the chaperones, because I was one of the few adults that actually liked to listen to some of the younger music and things like that. And then one day he said, Dory, I'd like to do a battle of the bands. I'm like, okay. And then he put me in charge of it. And I said, whoa, I've never done one of these. I'm just like a chaperone. No. Little did I know that I had to not only, find the bands and also staff the event and find volunteers to work the door, because they were charging ticket prices, find snacks, get different organizations to donate. And it turned out to be this huge project. And I remember thinking, Lord, I don't think you have the right person here. And sure enough, we pulled it off. It worked out really well. And that one experience, because the pastor said, here you go. And I guess God thought enough about she can do this, that turned out to be a business for me later on, working with young bands and doing concerts, events, and Battle of the Bands and things. But I never would have stepped into that if he didn't push me. And the dynamic changed, because he was supposed to be in charge of the event. I was like, no, I'll just chaperone. Oh, well, there you go.
That's good.
Joy, it looked like you were going to jump back in here with something.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
But I promise I will when I do.
Okay. Yeah. So, as I'm thinking about this, the reason why God gives us this varying power dynamics in relationship, whatever the relationship is because if everything was exactly equal, then things will end in a stalemate, right? So he's given someone over to be the leader, but that doesn't mean that they're supposed to lord their leadership over you. And they've given someone to be second in command or whatever the case is, but that doesn't mean that person is completely subservient. It means that they have the right to sow service, right? And so when I think about navigating power dynamics, it's all about serving and learning how to be served appropriately, right? Because some people have the other end of the spectrum where, like, they're okay with serving, but they can't stand to let someone serve them. They feel some kind of way, right? But being able to operate and navigate the power dynamics, no matter what the relationship is all about serving and being served. We think about Jesus, what happened when he finally, flipped the script and he was going to wash the disciples' feet. Oh, no, Lord, Peter said, never. You can never wash my feet. How could you, the master, serve me? Jesus was like, if I can't serve you, I have no part. You have no part with me. You haven't understood the kingdom accurately. It's about serving and also learning how to be served. Jesus was always serving. Jesus was serving the people. Okay, he's walking down the street. Someone pulls on his garment and he gets power that leaves his body, right? That was service, right? He is preaching, right? And people need to be fed. He prays, he has the disciples do it. He was always serving, but what happened is folk didn't necessarily, they probably didn't register it as he was serving. And okay, he's serving the people and I'm supposed to serve him, right? No, God wants to switch things up sometimes. And so in this power dynamic conversation, in navigating power dynamics, we're going to have to always look at how the kingdom of God wants to flow. It wants to always be giving and receiving. You have to take in order to continue to give, right? And you have to give to cause increase to come back to you, right? We sow seeds, we get a harvest. God gives seed to the sower. So you had to receive the seed that God gives. So it's that power dynamic is always an ebb and flow that God wants to give. He wants you to receive. He wants you to and even when we give things to God, the only thing we can give to him is what he's first given us, right?
Mhm.
So, but that's how the kingdom works. That's how the power dynamics work. And so that was a long way to say this is how we start this conversation, right? But it's always unbalanced. What do you think about that? Do you think I'm off with that about power dynamics being unbalanced, or
Mm-mm.
back up to that?
Mm-mm.
It reminds me of servant leadership. I mean, obviously, the example that you use, Jesus was the greatest servant leader among other things of all time, right? But even I think in the secular world, people are realizing that servant leaders are who people want to work for because they want to, or because they have respect for that person and they appreciate the vision. One example that comes to mind, and I'm not sure whether or not he's a Christian, and I actually don't know his name either, but one of the founders or one of the original CEOs of Costco, he was known for going to every single Costco location at least one time per year. Costco paid above average wages and benefits, which was just almost unheard of in that particular industry. And also over time, and this is me being the finance geek, even their stock price showed that over the long run, they actually outperformed a lot of other companies, even on the financial sense. And I think a lot of that was that servant leadership where they were paying their employees more, everyone respected their CEO, and he was able to garnish a lot more respect. And when he would say things, I'm sure people were much more likely to listen compared to simply going to work for that boss that you don't want to, or that you don't necessarily respect as much. So I think what you're saying there, Phil, that servant leadership, something that I think the secular world is even realizing, oh, there's something to this. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that our heart's in the right place and we're showing love to people. But I think it's a really powerful concept.
The key to this servant leadership and to serving others is not being selfish, right? That whatever you're doing it with humility. You're doing it because you have a genuine heart of what you want to see in others. You're not doing it to benefit yourself. And I think there's a lot of opportunity that people sees out there to be the antithesis of that, right? They do things with the wrong motives. Oh, but I'm serving you. But no, you're doing that so you'll get me to do something. And the people that seem to be really successful, Jesus being the first of them all, are the ones that do it with the right spirit and the right attitude, expecting nothing in return. Right.
People can tell when it's not genuine.
Right.
Over time, too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. So as we're talking about, the power dynamics not always being equal, one of the things that came to mind for me was like, for some people that probably is just not going to make sense. What do you mean dynamics can't be equal, right? But the example that I gave was like an example with money in the rapid fire that I did, right? So if I had $50 and I gave you $50, and then you turned right around and gave me back the $50, was there really an exchange that happened, right? Yeah, I meant we changed $50, but there was no exchange in value, right? Because the way we measure that value is exactly the same. Unless, let's say I gave you a $50 coin and you really like, if we had a $50 coin, I gave you a $50 coin and you find it more valuable to have the paper. Okay, then there's an exchange there, but there's value exchange there. But under most circumstances, that's not an exchange in value. Well, where the value happens is if I have something that you want a little bit more, then I want to keep this $50, right? So I got $50, and Brandon's gonna give me a haircut, and I really like Brandon's haircuts, and I think that his haircut is more valuable than the $50 I got in my hand. So I give him the $50, right? He gives me the haircut. To him, he might be like, I think the $50 is more valuable than my time that I'm taking to cut your hair, right? And so he receives that $50, but that's the whole thing. Like, depending on the person, they might look at that and be like, oh, I wouldn't spend $50 on the haircut.
Mhm.
But they didn't judge it as valuable. But that's always a dynamic in like navigating power dynamics.
Yeah.
You can look at that from economy. You can look at that from time. You can look at it from a variable, a lot of variables of things like that. But it's all about the value. So just because it looks like it's not valuable for me to be in second position, and someone else to be in leadership, that's not necessarily true. Right? Going back to the example that Latara gave, right? There is a power dynamic in being in second position because you get to do the thing that you want to do, but you don't have the responsibility.
Mhm.
You don't have to do all the dreaming. You don't have to. If it fails, it falls on someone else's shoulder, right? But the opposite is true as well. There's value in being the one in control because now you get to call the shots. You get the, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And someone comes alongside you and they support you, they serve you, right? And so when I think about navigating power dynamics, there's always, once again, this opportunity to serve and be served. It's someone has a little bit more power in this perspective and a little bit less in the other perspective. But even as we're navigating that, there is a way to navigate it in such a way where you don't have to ever feel like you're being taken advantage of. Because if you give the advantage, you can't feel like someone took advantage. Joy wants to take advantage of me, and I'm like, oh no, have at it. And I give her something. How can she take advantage of me? I gave it. I
Right.
came from a place of power in my serving, right?
Right.
And so, from the kingdom perspective, we have that power as a way of navigating power dynamics. Once again, the scripture: follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and service to God. Like, so Christ did it because he loved us. His love caused him to give. When we love God, it causes us to want to give to his kingdom in whatever way that looks, right? If we love other people, it causes us to want to give to them because this is a way I can show you that I love you by me serving you in this way. So what do you guys think? Am I talking crazy talk or are we still flowing?
You are not talking crazy at all. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to give you our thoughts, Mr. Bynes.
In business world, trust is our most valued currency. And the secret to building the trust? Resonating deeply with our audience, the needs and desires. Many of my clients and I have been where you are now, knowing you have value to offer, but unsure how to communicate it. That is why I created the Resonate Offers Guide. It's the culmination of my 12 plus years journey as a business coach and a KDE certified strategist, designed especially for us, Kingdom entrepreneurs. The guide will reveal how to design offers that resonate and attract your best clients, so you can finish 2023 with unmatched clarity and ready to shine in 2024. And because I believe this transformative power, I'm offering this guide for free for a limited time. Just go to kdbottle.com/resonate. Join me, let's lead, resonate, and build trust that propels our business to new heights.
All right, we are back, and I just want to say something that she said at the very beginning. I don't know if anyone caught this. She said, trust is value currency. And when I heard that, I thought that's what we were just talking about, right? For the most part, because you don't necessarily give what I value or who I value. I have some trust in. right?
Mhm.
And if I have a hard time placing value in you, I'm going to have a hard time trusting you. And that's kind of what was happening with that was the power dynamics of a shift of exchange between Jesus and the disciples, right? He was trusting them. The washing of the feet, yeah, it was ceremonial, it was this, but he was doing something. There was an exchange happening that they didn't even recognize at that time, you know, and not knowing that really what he was doing was placing you in the seat of moving, because he knew what was getting ready to happen to him. So listen, here's this time, and I trust you enough. I value you. I'm putting my trust in you to go and spread the good news, to go and do the work that I've called you to do. And that can only happen when there's a trust built up, right? I was like, wow, that here we go. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think that's huge,
I
Latara. It
think
goes
that
back to something you said earlier about being in a position of running the certification program. And we've all been in those positions where you think, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Well, God obviously trusted you to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he obviously knows what your potential is. And so often it is a trust thing. Like you've got to follow and think, okay, I'm going to take this leap of faith because God trusts me that I can handle, whatever he has placed in front of me, whether it's an opportunity or a training or whatever. Trust is a huge issue all around, not only between you and God, but between you and those that you interact with.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good.
And I think going back to Phil's haircut example, even of the $50 haircut, it's worth it to him, and then worth it to, I guess I was the barber in this example. Probably don't want none of you want me cutting your hair, but just for the sake of example, say that was worth my time. That's a win-win value exchange, right?
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, this phrase imposter syndrome can come up because where we think, oh, well, everyone knows how to cut hair like this, so why would anyone pay $50? I wouldn't pay $50 because I can do it myself, or because I already have these skills. And it's like, well, you might not pay $50. Say you're a life coach to work with someone in your specific industry, because you know a lot of the things, but that just because something is common sense to you doesn't mean other people don't find it immensely valuable. And I think that's a really big and important mindset shift, that whenever we are serving, and that's the whole point of business and kingdom business, is we're adding value to others' lives in excess of the dollar amount that we're receiving. That's that win-win value exchange, and which is exactly what Phil was talking about.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, Mr. Bynes, I think it's back on you.
It's back on me. I wanted to give plenty of time, make sure I don't jump in too early. So I think that there's, we've been talking about frameworks and stuff like that, or templates, when it comes to the Bible and in scriptures and stuff like that. And I feel like this is a template for how we can do this navigating of the power dynamics in any relationship, right? Is the example that was given to us about husbands and wife, right? And so the first part of that template is everyone submits one to another out of reverence for Christ. Like as kingdom citizens, we're all called to submit. It doesn't matter if we're in first position or second position. Not just submit to Christ, who is our head, and not just giving honor to God, who is our head, but also submitting to our brothers and sisters that may be a part of our team from the business context. So let's think about it. I'm the CEO of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, but if I've placed Latara in a certain position, and I've said that she has oversight over something, I actually submit to what she thinks about it, even though you can say, quote unquote, it's my company, or I'm the CEO, so I make the final call. No, if I really trust that I'm putting people in the positions that they're supposed to be in, I also have to trust that God is going to speak to them in a way that he wouldn't speak to me. And he's going to work something out in my kingdom business in a way that I would have missed if I didn't allow that person that is sitting in, let's just say, a submitted position to me, right? I need to also turn around and submit to that person. What do you guys think?
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else has anything, I'll be ready to jump. So here I
I think so many times what happens is people don't do the submission part, right? You hit it on the head. Phil, you and I had a conversation face to face the other day, and you talked about how you brought certain people to the table, but you leave it up to them to be able to do what you brought them in to do. You give them that authority, you give them that power. That's what you just described with Latara. And so when we talk about these power dynamics, that's a critical piece, is letting people do what they are called to do, not trying to control it just because your position might be one that's a little bit loftier as far as the titles go, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say part of that, Joy, is pride, right? People who are in, let's say they are the person that is at the top of the food chain. A lot of times they don't relinquish things to the people underneath them because they have pride. What if they don't do it the way that I think it should be done, and I wind up having egg on my face because they didn't represent me accurately? Yeah, that's a problem. It's risk. I mean, especially if you're kingdom, there's going to be risk. It's going to be messy. I think about the relationship with my children. I have to, if I say I'm training them up in the way they're supposed to go, that means I have to give them space to fail. It's best for them to fail in my house than to fail once they get outside my house. If they fail in my house, I can support them. That's part of my responsibility as their parent. That would be part of my responsibility as someone's boss, to support them when they don't necessarily hit the bullseye of the mark that I expected them to hit. But as I continue to give them, well, this wasn't quite it. But if you do this, if you do it just like this, or here's some suggestions, and then you let them try it again, eventually, either they would show that they have the ability to do it, or it's going to show that you weren't a good judge of character and you put the wrong person in position. But either one of those is a challenge to your pride sometimes.
But doesn't that circle back to trust? Trust is such an integral part of what you're describing there. And if you don't have the right trust in that person, and so they may make a mistake, but who doesn't? We're all human, right? You have to give them that opportunity to stretch and to grow and to be able to spread their wings and grow into the responsibility that has been given to them, whether they're a teenager, a young child, or a grown adult, right?
That's so good.
And without trust, it just becomes micromanaging, right? And you're just trying to do it your own way. And again, totally control that situation when you should be relinquishing at least some authority and then help out, excuse me, as needed. And then another thing that, I mean, we talk about this all the time because I think it's just so powerful, but then we have to be willing to collaborate on this as well. In this example, Phil, whenever you're delegating tasks to someone else, you have to not be selfish. You have to put the pride aside and be willing to collaborate, versus I think the prideful mindset is they're not going to do it my way, or they're not going to get it done effectively, or what's this going to look like on me, which again is all selfish thinking, versus being collaborative and being open to that kingdom collaboration.
That's good. That's good. Anybody else have anything before we move on?
One more thing. I was just thinking about how over the years, there have been different people that I have hired as contract workers for, say, web design or social media or whatever. And some were really, really difficult for me to work with and relinquish control, Phil, to be perfectly honest, because they weren't doing what I expected or thought that they would be able to do. They weren't able to do it. The communication wasn't there and it didn't turn out very well. But yet I've worked with others where I've barely had to say anything and they totally knew and they went with it and they handled it. And so, those individuals, those are my go-to people. I don't really get involved or try to micromanage at all, because I know that they know what they're doing and they do it very well, and they know me and they know my brand, and I don't have to be a control freak. I can step back.
But doesn't that go into maybe having alignment, having shared values, Because if you have that, then that's where you can trust. That's where you can let people do what you've asked them to do. It's when they go off script, if you will, and they improvise in a way that doesn't align with what you've asked them to do, that power dynamic becomes uncomfortable. And you're not able to lean into it as you had hoped you could.
That's good. That's really good. I love that. This is a great conversation, and I know that there's a little bit more to the template feel.
Okay, I'll move on. I got the hint.
All right.
That was a part of me.
Remember, I'm the timekeeper too, y'all. I got all these irons in the fire. Come on,
keeping us on track.
That's right. So the first part of that thing was, we submit to one another, regardless of the position that we're in. But when you are the person with greater authority, then the currency that you want to use more of, keeping that whole currency analogy, is you use the currency of love, right? So if I'm the person that's in a power position, if I love the person, I'm going to not just lord over them what I expect out of them. I'm going to give them space to operate in the thing that I'm delegating to them. And if they miss the mark, I'm going to come alongside them in love and help them see this is actually what I was looking for. But I love your effort here. But that's not quite it. Let's see if we can work through and see what the miscommunication was, right? But I'm doing that from the position of love, not a you so dumb. How could you even think that's what I was looking for? Right? So now what you've done is you've made them gun shy by beating them over the head. They're trying to support you. They're doing what they think is a supporting action or service. Maybe they're not, but we assume that they are doing it, right? And then we hit them or we hurt them or we retaliate against them for them trying to do something. And it just makes them gun shy and they won't even, they won't put the type of effort in. But if you come alongside them and you display love from that position, you can help to encourage them along. You can help them to develop even more, and they'll be happy to give it another shot, right?
That's good. That's good. It just made me think about grace. It just made me think about grace because, when love is a currency, grace is a part of it anyway, right? And you think about Jesus and the disciples too, because love was the currency, Jesus trained with grace and mercy. Do you know how many times, he probably could have been like, you know what, Peter, I need for you to go back. I don't know why I went and helped you fish and why I'm even teaching you this. But he knew the greatness that was within Peter and what Peter would move into. And, it's just like Shane and I talk a lot about team dynamics and the training of team because I have a team. And, and I remember her telling me, keep giving them love. Keep giving them grace. Yeah, but do you know what they did? Keep giving them love. Keep giving them grace. That's a different kind of power dynamic when you think about it, that many people really don't. And kingdom entrepreneurs too, we struggle with understanding we have to put that in place. Keep giving them grace, keep giving them love, because you're training them into the greatness that God has called them to. Right? It's just like I tell my team members all the time, I'm like, I don't micromanage. If I have to micromanage you, then you might not be a good fit for this team because I don't believe in micromanaging. I'm going to let you know, here, this is what I'm looking for. And along the way, we can train. But if you disappear or you kind of do something different or you go, I'm going to be sitting there scratching my head going, well, what do they want? Well, you didn't tell me what to do. No. I told you from Jumpstart, I don't micromanage. Now, if you have some questions, ask those questions, but don't sit and wait for me to come and tell you something is not quite right. Something is wrong. Because if I bring you on my team, I have a level of trust in you because I'm not going to bring nobody on my team I don't trust. You might be a contractor, and if I'm gonna try you once, and if I don't trust you then, I'm not gonna ever try you again. Right? So there's this grace and mercy that has to be given in the midst of power dynamics as that's what servant leaders should do anyway. That's how we should be flowing.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. I would say the third part of this template is the follow God's example part, right? And so, the only way to attain greatness in the kingdom is by being the servant of all. We already talked about service quite a bit. But if we follow God's example, he served us by sending his son. Then Jesus served us by dying on the cross. He gave it all, right? He served all. He did it for everybody, right? So that his desire is that none would be lost. We know that some will be lost, but his desire was that none would be lost. So he paid it all, right? And so if we're going to follow God's example, we have to do the same thing. We have to be willing to be the servant of all, right? Great or small, it don't matter, right? So the third piece of that relational puzzle is be willing to be the servant of all, right? We can't afford to have certain segments or certain groups that we're like, I can't serve them. You might not want to. They may not be the sweet spot of who you're serving, but you have to have the willingness to do it, because if God tells you to do it, the evidence that you're getting close to God is that first of all, you're going to be obedient to do what he says, and that you're going to love, right? Because God is love, right? And then he loves by serving as well.
That's good.
Anyone got something on this before I move to the next point? Following God's example.
The only thing that I heard when you were talking, Phil, was you were saying that God is love and serving people, whether we want to or not. And I heard, love the unlovable, right? And sometimes we're called to do that, because not every person that we're called to serve is going to be exactly the person we want to embrace or send a Christmas card to, right? But we have to love them anyway, whether we like people or not.
Oof.
Yeah.
Hope people caught that one, because listen, it's just like times, and I used to tell my kids, I love you. I might not always like you, but I'm always love you, because it's been times when I have not liked my children. But I always love them. I always love them. And I act on that, as opposed to acting on the right now we ain't in the best of spaces, but I still love you. That oldest child of mine, he'll tell you, because we be butting heads sometimes, and we've had to learn. I had to really learn how to act from a space of love, and that's the same in every relationship. Every relationship requires that type of action. So yeah, because
the other side of that coin is like, okay, so if you are the person that's in charge and you're loving, and that's the way you're displaying your authority, that's the way that you're displaying your service to them, is by loving them as you're giving them instructions or whatever the case is. What that does for the person that's in that subservient or the subordinate position is it builds trust, right? So because they know that you're not going to beat them up when they make a mistake, they trust that you really mean what you say when you say, this is yours, run with it. I'm not going to take it back over. I want you to flow in the fullness of what you're supposed to do. It builds confidence, it builds trust, and they're able to move forward. And it motivates them to keep moving and to grow in the position. It looked like Dory has something to say, so I'm gonna get quiet.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. It reminds me of certain churches that I've attended where they always say, oh, we're welcome and open to everyone, but yet when people came in that didn't look like they expected, all of a sudden it became more like a country club, because, well, we don't want that kind of person. Or look at the way that teen is dressed. They don't know what's in the person's heart, and they don't know what the potential is of that person, or even what they're going to contribute. They could actually be way more spiritual than some of the people that are sitting in the pews, but they wouldn't give the person the time of day because they didn't like the way they looked or dressed. And is that being open and loving? I don't know. I think that's why a lot of people get turned off by church or even Christians, because they say, well, you all say you love everybody, but then if you're saying you're only going to love certain people, that kind of breaks down.
You made me think of the power dynamic that we saw in the Pharisees and their interactions with Jesus.
Mm.
I can expound on that, but I think we all know. So
yeah. And when you think about that power dynamics, it was because they were fearful.
right.
Mhm.
It was, and it wasn't just the pride. They were prideful too, but they
Mhm.
were fearful because, I mean, the word clearly said that he was coming. They had the scriptures that said that he was
Yeah.
coming, and they still denied him because his power scared them. Like,
Right.
whoa, who is this man? And that makes me think about when people used to tell me off. I used to hear this all the time, and my son said something that blessed my heart. I used to hear people say all the time, you intimidate me. Why would I intimidate you? And my son AJ said something. He said, you have a huge presence, and your presence is so big that sometimes people don't know how to take it. And they get intimidated by it, but you're the most loving person if they take the time to move beyond the fact that you have a big presence. There's nothing wrong with your big presence, Mom. Don't be ashamed of it, right? Because I was the type, I used to go, well, let me go. I used to get like, well, why are they intimidated by me? What did I do? Let me shut up. Let me be quiet. And God was like, for what? I gave you a loud mouth. I gave you a big presence for a reason.
But your big presence goes back to authenticity, goes back to trust, goes back to being sincere, all of those different things. There's a lot of big presences that we see in society today that do not possess those things, and they have every right to be fearful and run the other way, right?
Yeah.
But what you have doesn't bear those negative traits at all. And that's the nuance.
Yeah. So what if we took the time to see people like Joy see? She took the time to go, okay, what is it about Latara? Let me figure. And Joy and I've had email conversations and all of that. So she took the time to go, who is this woman? There have been people who have gone to Shay Bynes and said, I don't know how you feel, Latara. I don't feel her. Well, what is it about her? Like literally. And I feel like, are you kidding me? And sometimes they confess it, and sometimes they go, yeah, I had a conversation with him about X, Y, and Z. And that would really trip me out. But we have to understand, and Phil talked about this thing of, I'm one of the most, I will submit to authority in a minute, the right authority, right? I don't have a problem with that. So I might have a big presence, but I know how to balance that thing out. And sometimes I try to make somebody like, I don't want to, you gonna do, I'm good. I'm gonna sit right back here because I don't want to be that big presence.
But that's the key, what you just said, right? That's a perfect segue into this last point. From the standpoint of being a leader, I trust the subordinate who honors my leadership by submitting, right? And so this is all about this trust thing, is trusting God and trusting the people that He put around you, right? So I can honor someone that is my subordinate when I know that they're listening. They submit to my leadership. They actually try to do what I say, right? Now I'm like, oh, I can trust them even more because I know that they're hearing me. Likelihood of them capturing my heart is also high, right? And so that's how this thing works with our power dynamics, right? It all stems from love. We have to follow God's example. We have to be willing to serve, and we have to know how to be served as well. And if we do all those things, we will be able to navigate power dynamics without, there'll be some challenges, but we'll be able to get through those challenges without a whole lot of fuss.
Yeah.
Because He's given us an example, right, in His word here.
That's good. This has been a great conversation. When I titled this The Exchange and Navigation of Power Dynamics, I was like, because you had the navigation, right? And I was like, what's an exchange? And we've talked about that this whole hour is the exchange and the navigation. The template is about the navigation, right? Everything else we were talking about is like about this exchange, the exchange piece or the navigation piece. And that is just it blows my mind when we can have these kind of conversations like power dynamics, and we can take it to the level, which means we're elevating it to the level of the kingdom. We're not downplaying it or anything, because power dynamics is important. We've learned that there is time when God says you have the power. And then there are times when he says, you're going to give this power over to someone else, or you're going to, you're going to yield it all to me. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to train you and lead you, and here's the power, right? So this has been a really, really great conversation. And I think I'm gonna have to listen to this again. I don't seldom listen to the replays because I just me, and sometimes I don't like hearing my own voice. So I just but this one was really good. So before we check out of here today, any last words from anyone?
Well, I'll just say this. You guys could tune in the next 2 weeks. We'll be talking about power dynamics some more, right?
Yeah.
This one was navigating, but we're going to get into some specific things because God just started downloading some stuff. And so there's at least 2 more that's coming. So
this going to be good, right? And that's really 2 more. That's taking us right on into almost the Thanksgiving day. Y'all, that's my favorite. Outside of my birthday is a holiday, by the way. January 17th. I just tell people all the time, that is a national holiday. Okay, so let the boss know you need that time off. But
What's Darvinese Day?
Thanksgiving would have to be my favorite holiday. So we're going into some of my favorite times of the year, and I'm super excited that we're having these conversations about power dynamics and just all the great and wonderful things. And we're learning so much about how the kingdom wants to operate in everything that we do. So especially in business. So we want to thank you guys so much for joining us this week. This has been great. It's been wonderful, and a whole bunch of gravy too. We will see you all next week.